It's a 15-minute session about a very serious subject and issue, particularly for this continent, which is malaria. So half the world's population is at risk of malaria, and it's one of those diseases where it's the poorest in the world who are the most vulnerable, and it's Africa and Africa's children who are the most vulnerable of all. But there is hope, and we're going to hear from a fantastic guy about that hope. He has a brilliant mission, which I think he's going to tell you, so I won't give it away now. But Martin Edlund was the founding member of Malaria No More, which kind of, the idea behind it is it does what it says on the tin. He is now its CEO, and he's here to tell us why his ambition of eradicating this terrible killer disease is within reach. So please welcome Martin Edlund.
I've never walked on stage to music before. I feel like Derek Jeter in Yankee Stadium. If only I could hit like him. So this is a presentation about the revolutionary power of mobile to defeat one of the top 3 killers on the planet, malaria. But before we dive in, I want to ask some of you a question. I was just talking to a new friend, Chimbesi from Benin, in the break before this, and he was telling me that he had a severe bout of malaria about 2 years ago. He waited a little while to get his treatment, and he ended up in the hospital for 3 days, and then sick at home for 3 weeks, right as he was studying for his finals. So how many of you come from countries where malaria is endemic? Raise your hands. How many of you have had malaria? Okay, look around. So I hope this isn't only a 15-minute conversation, but one that you can have with your peers. For those who may not know it, as well as those that raise their hands, here are a few facts. Malaria threatens half the world's globe, 3.5 billion people. There were 219 million cases last year, according to the WHO. By some accounts, malaria has killed more people than any other single cause in human history. More than war, more than famine, more than any other disease. It continues to kill a child at the rate of a child every 60 seconds, and most of these deaths happen here on the African continent in sub-Saharan Africa. As we heard from Chimbesi, it's a major cause of school absenteeism, the leading cause in Africa, and also a major challenge for economic progress. The good news is, through a massive global effort that many of you have been a part of, we've managed to reduce deaths from malaria by 33% in the last 6 years. Give yourselves a hand. That's a top 3 killer of kids, down by 1/3 in the space of 6 years. But how do we get at that other 2/3? How do we ensure that no child dies from a mosquito bite, and ultimately that we're able to eradicate this disease? We've realized that malaria thrives on bad information. Even the word malaria is a misnomer. It's an Italian word that means poisonous or unwholesome air, because that's how they thought that malaria was transmitted. It wasn't until 1897 that Dr. Ronald Ross discovered the malaria parasite in the belly of a mosquito. And bad information is why an otherwise healthy child continues to die at the rate of 1 every 60 seconds. But at Malaria No More, we're convinced that good information, data, is how we're going to beat this problem. And it starts with 2 simple devices: a rapid diagnostic test and a mobile phone. Now, until a few years ago, there was no easy way to get a timely, accurate diagnosis for malaria. You had to travel a great distance to a health clinic that had an expensive microscope, a trained lab technician. You had to wait for a blood slide and then hope that the doctor got it right. Then came the RDT, the rapid diagnostic test. This 60-cent device tells you in a matter of a few minutes with 99.5% accuracy if you have the malaria parasite in your system. I'd encourage us to think about this not just as a test, a positive or a negative, but as a 1 or a 0, a bit of data. And there are now 200 million of these bits of data rolling out on the African continent each year. Now, where it gets really exciting is when you combine that with this, a mobile phone. Not a smartphone, not an iPhone 5S or even a 5C. This is my old Nokia phone from when I lived in Senegal 4 years ago. Of all the tools in the malaria fight, mosquito nets, tests, treatment, targeted use of spraying, this is the tool that's going to tip the balance and allow us to beat this disease. As many of you know, there's a mobile revolution underway on the African continent. By the end of 2015, there'll be 1 billion mobile phones here in Africa. When I first moved to Senegal, I'd go to the most remote villages, and I'd find one company there consistently. Any guesses about who it is? Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola somehow managed to get everywhere. Applause for Coca-Cola. To get everywhere on the continent. You go to those same remote villages today, you find not only Coca-Cola, but companies like Vodacom, MTN, Tigo, Airtel, Orange. Some of the highest tech companies in Africa competing tooth and claw for customers living on less than $1.25 a day. Now, we're convinced that the mobile phone is not only the key to better communication and economic progress, but also the key to beating one of the top 3 killers of kids. So, standing here at One Young World, we're going to make a bold claim today. Malaria will be the first disease beaten by mobile. I want to tell you about 4 quick examples of how that's happening. The first is Cameroon, where mobile was used to increase nightly net use of mosquito nets. We partnered with the government of Cameroon back in 2010 when they were on the eve of their first universal coverage bednet campaign. 8.6 million nets going out to cover every man, woman, and child in the country. But most of these households had never had a net before, so we also had to figure out how to communicate with them, to show them how to use their nets and to remind them to use them. And that's especially challenging when, in many of these places, there's no television, there's no radio, even no electricity. The answer? You guessed it, mobile. We partnered with the government of Cameroon, with ExxonMobil, with MTN, the largest mobile provider on the continent. We worked with footballers like Didier Drogba and Samuel Eto'o, and we stole a page from the American marketing playbook. How many of you are children of the 80s and 90s from the US and may remember the campaign, "It's 10 p.m., do you know where your children are?" I still don't know where children were going at 10 p.m., and I hope to God they found them. But we tweaked this message, and at 9 p.m., right about the time that the Anopheles mosquito that carries the malaria parasite was coming out and biting people, we delivered on radio, television, and to 6 million mobile subscribers a simple message from some of the best-known names in Cameroon. It's 9 p.m., are you and your family sleeping under your mosquito net? The results were profound. A 12% increase in nightly net use among kids under 5. For anyone who's done health education work, it's hard to move the needle. This is a big, big number, translating to over 500,000 people sleeping under nets who wouldn't have been otherwise. Our second example comes from Tanzania, where they were trying to solve the problem of stockouts of life-saving malaria drugs. Now, malaria is a nightmare for parents. Your child spikes 106-degree fever, and within 24 hours of the onset of symptoms, they can be dead. So all across Africa, each night, parents find a child whose fever's gotten severe, they swaddle them, strap them on their back, and they make their way to the clinic. They show up at that clinic in the morning, hoping against hope that they have this, $1 worth of life-saving treatment. If this $1 worth of treatment's there, 3 days later, the child's home and playing soccer with their friends. If not, they may never leave the clinic. The problem is that a lot of these clinics run on antiquated paper-based systems. It can take 6 months or more for information to move through the system, and that's way too long when it comes to stockouts. So our partner, Novartis, the world's leading manufacturer of life-saving malaria treatments, set out to solve this using mobile phones. They set up a system working with 126 health workers in 3 clinics or 3 regions in Tanzania, where people, through a few keystrokes, could upload the status of their malaria stocks and anticipate stockouts. When they began, 26% of those clinics were completely stocked out of anti-malarial drugs. That means the father you saw a moment ago had a 1 in 4 chance of showing up and there being no life-saving treatment for his child. A few months later, through the innovative use of mobile phones, it was less than 1% of clinics completely stocked out. That's right, a 97% reduction in stockouts. Our third example comes from Nigeria, the most malaria-endemic country on the planet. It accounts for over 200,000 of the deaths that we have each year from this disease. Now, having access to a treatment only matters if it's authentic and if it's going to be effective. But as the malaria market has grown, it's caught the attention of counterfeiters. And there's a huge black market trade in counterfeit and substandard drugs. They're flooding the African market. The challenge is especially difficult in a place like Nigeria, where most people get their malaria drugs, 90% buy them in stalls like this, sold alongside knockoff soccer jerseys and open-air butcher shops. The answer came in a very simple but elegant form with a company called Sproxel. Sproxel began attaching labels to their malaria drugs. It's a scratch-off label like a lottery ticket. And when you did that, it revealed a code. When you texted that code in, it told you whether you had an authentic or a fake drug. And if it was a fake or a stolen drug, it gave you the number to alert authorities. By providing this simple service to consumers, Sproxel has grown quickly. In the course of a few months, they've had 4.5 million people texting in and authenticating their drugs. It also works as a kind of LoJack for stolen drugs. You can see when drugs are stolen, they have the serial numbers, and you can see when they start to show up on the market. Then they can alert authorities and capture the criminals, like they did recently with a batch of $10,000 worth of stolen drugs. But I contend that the real opportunity here goes beyond fighting counterfeits. What Sproxel has the potential to do is take what was once invisible, people going out who had malaria and buying drugs, and turning it into data. We have the opportunity for 200 million data points that would give us a real-time map of malaria in Nigeria. That's how we're going to beat the disease in the most malaria-endemic country on the planet. Now, what if we could combine the mobile revolution in Africa with the mobile revolution happening around the world with smartphones, the ones that are clogging up the Wi-Fi lines here in the room? That's the goal of a new campaign that Malaria No More is launching called the Power of One. Power of One is built on a really simple consumer proposition, arguably the best bang for your buck that you can have in terms of humanitarian impact. Every dollar buys and delivers a life-saving test and treatment to a child who needs it in Africa. We're starting in Zambia, where we're looking to fill a 3 million treatment gap over the next 2 years and ensure that every child gets the treatment they need. And we're working with some great partners around the globe. Novartis, who makes the malaria treatments, is donating 1 million treatments a year to match you and double your impact. Alere is donating 1 million rapid diagnostic tests. We're working with tech companies like Twitter and Venmo, which is now part of PayPal, which is a really elegant system for making mobile payments. We're working with media companies, mobile providers. I want to say hello to my friend Mwamvita Makamba from Vodacom, who's here with us today. And we're also working with some figures who are very well known to those of you in the room. David Jones and Kate Robertson and Havas have joined us for the Power of One campaign. Give them a round of applause. It's a platform that's mobile first, that allows you to make frictionless donations, to see your impact, to engage friends, to track your treatment into the field as it moves through the warehouses, ultimately into the hands of health workers, and finally saves a child's life. Through a partnership with the government of Zambia and a group called Path Masepa, we're working with 500 community health workers in Zambia who are reporting on a weekly basis the number of kids tested and treated. We're sending that to the people who fund these treatments. Here you see a report, 41 kids treated last week at Chiabi Health Center in southern Zambia. So the Power of One is not about $1. It's not even about one kid. The one in Power of One is you. And so I want to invite all of you today at One Young World to join us. I don't want to ask you for $1. This isn't a fundraising exercise. I want to ask you to be a part of this, to share it with your friends. So through a special promotion here at One Young World, working with Novartis and Alere, if you go to act.po1.org, that's act.po1.org, and enter the code OYW for One Young World, we'll send a life-saving test and treatment on your behalf. There are about 1,200 of us here in the room. I understand there are as many as 30,000 people watching online. So if we do that, we can test and treat 32,000 kids today. Please join us. And while you're waiting for the Wi-Fi, I want to introduce you to one of the kids whose life was saved by $1 in Zambia. Meet Lorna. Thank you very much. Please take a moment. Join us at act.po1.org. Send your treatments. We can make this one young world without malaria. Thanks so much.
That's fantastic.
Thanks, Kevin.
No, I think to set out to make it the first disease ever conquered by mobile, I think is absolutely brilliant.
Okay.